Hey, I'm Daniel from Ratings.com. Today we're testing the LG C9. It's a 2019 OLED TV and the successor to the very popular C8 from last year. We bought the 55-inch model to test, but it's also available in a larger 65 and 77-inch size. We expect these other sizes to have very similar picture quality and performance. The last digits of the model code vary a bit between regions, but they are still essentially the same TV. The C9 will likely be the most popular high-end model of LG's 2019 lineup. As an OLED TV, the direct competitors are the Sony OLEDs, and although they aren't available in the US, the Panasonic OLEDs in Europe also offer close competition. These TVs all share LG's OLED panels. This TV also competes against high-end LCD TVs, so we'll compare the performance to some of them in this video. First, we'll look at the design of the TV and then move on to the picture quality. We'll look at the motion handling and input lag, and then compare to other competing models which are currently available. If you'd like to skip straight to our test results, then see the links in the description down below. The design of the C9 is excellent. It looks very similar to the C8 from last year. It sits a bit lower on the low-profile stand, which some people might like, and overall feels very sturdy and well built. If you're not wall mounting it, then it does require quite a large table. The controls are located on the front of the TV under the center. There is only a single button, which is definitely less versatile than the joystick of last year. It is fine though, and allows basic operation like turning off and on the power or changing source. The borders of the TV are extremely thin and look great. Moving around to the side, the TV appears extremely thin, which looks very impressive. The electronics are located in the thicker bottom half of the TV, but the OLED panel itself is exceptionally thin. 3 HDMI ports and a USB port are directed out of the side of the TV, which are fairly easy to access when wall-mounted. All of these HDMI ports are advertised to support the new HDMI 2.1 standard for higher bandwidth, but no HDMI 2.1 devices are available yet, as we'll talk about later. On the rear of the TV are the remainder of the inputs, including a tuner, composite input, and audio out jack. All of these cables can be routed through the stand at the back of the TV to keep them out of sight. Moving back to the front, we've taken a photo of the TV through a thermal camera. Overall, the screen is relatively uniform as the self-emissive OLED layer produces a uniform heat distribution. The center of the screen is a bit warmer, and this may be due to the location of the electronics on the back. Now we'll move on to the picture quality. We'll be comparing to currently available TVs, but competing models will change as new TVs are released throughout the year. For an updated comparison with new models as we buy and test them, see the review page on our website, which is linked down below. We'll start with the contrast. A high native contrast ratio is important for those who watch TV in the dark, as it helps to produce deep dark scenes. Unlike LCD TVs, OLED TVs are a self-emissive technology, which means that each subpixel produces its own light. This means that they can be turned off completely, resulting in perfectly deep blacks and an infinite contrast ratio. The Q90R and Z9F can't produce as deep blacks, but if you watch in a room with some lights, then this isn't a problem. Now, although OLED TVs can produce deep blacks, an area that they have traditionally had more problems with is the transition out of black in dark scenes. Looking at a dark 5% gray, there is some faint horizontal and vertical banding on our C9. For most people, this is unlikely to be an issue, and if you aren't watching this video in the dark, then you probably can't see it either. We also take a photo of a brighter 50% gray pattern on each TV. This is because uniformity issues, which tend to affect all colors, are most noticeable on the uniform gray background. Issues here can result in distracting areas known as the dirty screen effect, which are problematic when playing games or watching sports. The C9 performs exceptionally well, which is excellent. This is much better than the Q90 or Z9F, which both have vignetting around the edges and non-uniform areas near the center. Now, if you sometimes watch off-axis or have wide seating, then good viewing angles are important to ensure an accurate image from any viewing position. We measure the image accuracy in increments of 10 degrees off-axis to evaluate each display's performance. The good news is that the C9 offers excellent performance as the gamma remains very consistent. The brightness also doesn't drop much, which is good, but the colors do shift, so it's far from perfect. All of these TVs are very good in this respect, as shown in the video. The Q90R and Z9F both have optical layers to improve their viewing angles, so check out our review videos which are linked below if you'd like to learn more. Now, if you've got a bright room, then good reflection handling is very important. The C9 offers almost exactly the same performance as the C8 from last year. It is excellent and does help to reduce the intensity of reflection significantly, but also results in a purple tint, which some people don't like. The Q90R is the standout among these TVs, with the best reflection handling we've seen so far. This is excellent for those in a bright room. A bright image is also important to counteract glare. New to the C9 this year is the peak brightness setting, which adjusts how the automatic brightness limiter performs. Setting this to off results in most scenes being displayed at about 300 nits, unless the entire screen is bright, in which case the luminosity drops to about 140 nits. Increasing this setting to low, medium, or high increases the peak brightness of small highlights. We tested with this setting on high to produce the brightest possible image, and the C9 is able to produce bright highlights. As the brightness of the screen increases further though, like on our full screen white slide, the TV's ABL or automatic brightness limiter kicks in. This restricts the power usage of the TV and limits the brightness of the whole screen to about 140 nits. This is fine for most people, but in a bright room it may not be enough to counteract glare. When watching HDR content, a high peak brightness is important to produce highlights that stand out. The C9 can produce bright highlights in our HDR real scene at about 730 nits. We can see how this compares to other TVs we've tested in the past 3 years, and it is a good result. Overall, while the C9 is likely bright enough for most people, if you really care about a bright image and highlights that stand out, then a bright LCD TV like the Q90 or Z9F may be a better choice. A wide color gamut is important for producing vivid colors in HDR content. The C9 can produce a wide color gamut, which is great and is actually a bit better than the Q90R and Z9F. This is great for those who plan to watch HDR. We also measure the EOTF, or electro-optical transfer function, of each HDR TV. This measurement shows how the brightness of the TV changes depending on the signal level or stimulus. The yellow line in this plot is the reference PQ curve, or the brightness that an ideal TV should follow. This reference line is unachievable for any TV at the moment though, so every TV has a way to tone map the input signal to the display's capabilities. The C9 is the first TV we've tested that allows for adjustment and calibration of this PQ curve. This requires advanced equipment though, so is really only a feature for enthusiasts. Like other OLED TVs, the C9 may have the risk of burn-in after displaying long periods of static content. It uses an organic compound to emit light, which degrades with usage. You can see our video series, which is linked below, for an investigation into this issue. However, we don't expect it to be a problem for most people with changing content. Now on to the motion handling. If you'd like to learn more about motion on TVs, then check out our video series, which is linked down below. The response time of the C9 is instantaneous. This results in very little blur following fast-moving content, as most of the blur is the result of persistence from the sample and hold of the image. This is great for gaming and watching sports. Unfortunately for low frame rate content, this also means there's no blur to smooth between frames of low frame rate movies. This results in jarring movement when displaying long, slow panning shots in movies. Like other recent OLED TVs, the C9 also supports a black frame insertion feature. For 60Hz content, this displays each frame for half of the duration with black frames in between. It works well to clear up persistence blur and is useful for gamers. Those sensitive to flicker may find it distracting, and it reduces the screen brightness significantly though, so it isn't for everyone. At the time of testing, this isn't possible with 120Hz signals, as it causes every second frame to be lost. This is strange because 120Hz black frame insertion was a rumored feature, so we'll continue to test this TV with new firmware updates. Check out our review, which is linked below, for the latest updates. Now, if you plan to game or use the TV as a PC monitor, then a low input lag is important to reduce the delay between an action in-game and when you see it on the screen. The input lag is exceptionally low in SDR at about 13.5 milliseconds for 60Hz content. At 120 Hz, it is even lower, at less than 7 milliseconds. This is excellent for gamers. Unfortunately, we weren't able to send the TV a 4K 120 Hz signal. This is a bit strange because we were able to send this resolution over the bandwidth of HDMI 2.0 to the Q90R with chroma subsampling. This is an advertised feature of the C9, so it may require HDMI 2.1. There aren't any HDMI 2.1 devices available yet, but when we can buy one, we'll retest this feature on the C9. The C9 supports variable refresh rates, which is great, but only via HDMI Forum's new format, which isn't compatible with FreeSync or G-Sync. The only device currently on the market which supports this type of variable refresh rate is the Xbox One. We tested it for compatibility with our Xbox One S, and it does appear to work, but only in SDR. If HDR is enabled on the Xbox and you're in game mode, then there is a constant flickering with the current firmware. This will likely be fixed in the future though, so check out our review for the latest update. Unfortunately, it isn't possible to determine the variable refresh rate range within Xbox One. So now on to LG's WebOS Smart Interface. Currently at version 4.5, it hasn't changed much since last year and is still very easy to use, especially with the included remote that can be also used as a virtual pointer. There are a few new smart features, including a home dashboard feature that can interact with IoT devices, similar to the Samsung SmartThings feature. The LG Content Store also has one of the widest selection of apps available. The C9 is also advertised to support Apple HomeKit and AirPlay 2 via a firmware update in the future, but it doesn't work at the time of this video. Onto the sound. This TV delivers a decent overall sound quality. It can get pretty loud and produces clear dialogue. It can't produce much thump or rumble though, and for those who really care about sound, an external sound system is a better choice. This TV is also advertised to support the new WiSA wireless sound standard for connecting a home theater system, but we haven't tested this. So overall, the C9 is a very impressive TV. While it offers basically the same picture quality as the C8 from last year, it includes a few new features. The C9 has 4 HDMI 2.1 inputs, which for the moment doesn't add much. The C9 also supports eARC and the HDMI 2.1 variable refresh rate technology, which is currently only supported by the Xbox One. Overall, if you just care about the picture quality, then go with the cheaper model. But if you want the newest TV with the latest bells and whistles, then the C9 doesn't disappoint. The Samsung Q90 and the LG C9 use different panel types, each with their own advantages and disadvantages. The C9 looks much better in a dark room, as the OLED panel delivers perfect blacks. The Q90R is significantly brighter, and the brightness doesn't change as much with different content. The C9 has better gray uniformity, but the risk of permanent burn-in when exposed to static content. Between the Z9F and the C9, the best TV also depends on your usage. The Z9F uses a VA panel and is much brighter than the C9, and the brightness doesn't change as much with different content. The C9 looks much better in a dark room, as the OLED panel delivers perfectly deep blacks. Unfortunately though, the C9 also has a chance of burn-in when exposed to static content, but we don't expect most people to have this problem. So that's it. What do you think of the C9? Are the incremental improvements over the C8 worth it? Let us know what you think down below. You can check out all of our measurements on our website. And if you like this video, subscribe to our channel or become an insider on the website to get access to our test results first. Thank you for watching and see you next time.